Great games at your table. I'm Jonathan Albin. This is NycosRPG, and we are doing an episode of the Game Master's Guide. Tonight we're going to be talking about the relative merit or the absolute merit of effective exposition and how to properly tell a story. And yes, there's a reason why I've got my pith helmet on. We'll get into that. But before so, make sure you click all the buttons down below to let the algorithm know you're part of our audience. And let's get started.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game.
When we look at role-playing games, we realize that it's storytelling. It's generally a group of people who are collectively sharing an experience and building up the artificial memories of a group of individuals in a particular scene at a particular time in a particular realm. And when we talk about telling stories, there are ways of telling stories, and then there are ways of actually telling the story. And so we're going to be talking tonight about the concept of exposition. It's a necessary, useful, and effective way to convey information, but it is and can be rather troublesome for some players and some game masters to really get a handle on. So today we're going to be talking about what those particular merits of exposition are and how to hit the right beats to make it effective. I can tell you that the players that are in the games that I run often find their waiting with bated breath for additional information that they simply haven't determined how they can discover yet and are looking for ways to ask for it, mainly because the lore is so intrinsic to the world that it's not apparent. It's not just laying on the ground someplace to be picked up. And so they are looking for ways to get resources that can help them. It's not too far akin really to the early parts of the movie The Lord of the Rings, particularly the Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf rides off to Gondor to look into the archives concerning Isildur and the reign of men that is housed there. And not much is made of it simply because he goes there for that purpose, and they show the passage of time as he's looking in through different books and reading certain passages and digging up different scrolls and such. But there are ways to make such an exciting game mechanic for your players, and many people don't know how to do this. In general cases, they just choose to fundamentally pontificate and give the information to the players lump sum in a burst that is unsatisfactory and dissatisfying to just about everybody in the room. And so when we're talking about the role of exposition, what we're talking about is the not only what you're going to say and what information you're going to provide, but how you're going to allow the players to discover that information on their own so that they feel part of the process, and indeed you let them drive what they want to discover and therefore what they will feel satisfied having learned. So the first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is the critical use of the NycosRPG mechanism for partial successes, wild successes, and full successes, and all of that. Because what we're doing is we're setting up, just as you would in a combat conflict, we're setting up the same kind of contests for the players to literally be rolling against their particular skills in this arena so that they are experiencing it in the same playful way as they would a combat scene. Because the players want to know that there is stuff that they can actually know about the world. One of the worst things that a game master can do for his to his players is to cut them or source them out of the information so that they don't feel like they had to work for it, that there was no gathering of that information at all, instead that it just was dumped on them and takes away their experiential joy. Because the very purpose for having die rolling mechanisms in a game are to create those happenstance clever moments where the die roll makes the players feel that there was effort put in. And one of the ways to do this is to have them develop in terms that they can understand and what makes sense to them for doing this research. Now, some people want to do it just as scholastic research, and that's antiseptic and kind of simplistic, but okay, that's one way to go. Others want it to be a matter of raw discovery, and so they really want to have the idea of pursuing it from the standpoint of a hunt or a gathering of information as a percentage growth per time period, and really to make the game session that is useful, also effective and fun to play, put mechanics in place for the players, such as the Nycos mechanisms, to use for that. So, for example, if they are wanting to know a particular detail about an ancient person, then you grant a certain numeric value, say 40%, and then they have to ramp to gather that information, and each source that they attempt is only going to provide them 5% at a time, and so therefore they are looking at literally how many books they're going to have to search through and how difficult the research is going to be. And you can control all of this dynamically by setting the state of the ramp, the rate of the ramp, and the advancement of the ramp, and therefore they can chunk along at individual percentage points over a longer period of time if that's what you so desire, or they can get to it in pretty quick order if they get a series of really good dice rolls on their ramps. Either which way, you are providing the players with a feeling that what they're doing is actually the work of researching. And this allows them to feel like the information can be known, that it can be discovered, and that they can actually have the agency to actually make that discovery occur. On another level, of course, education can be a matter of awareness and observation, and it's not really osmosis to learn by such a fashion, but literally going into a library and utilizing skills such as library research or the Dewey Decimal System, if you're talking about modern era or whatever. These methodologies can be used as mechanical skills, and they can advance and improve on those over time so they get better at it. Or you can simply make it a matter of their observancy in the actual searching for the item, and therefore they can roll against their cognizance and simply find by chance what they're looking for. And it's really up to you as a game master which of these methods you want to use, because it's a matter of what you want it to feel like. If it's a long shot, hard to differentiate and hard to discover, then certainly make the die roll a very narrow margin and provide therefore an only extremely tiny doorway for the random wild success to occur. Whereas if you really want it to be something that's general and easily found, then set the threshold relatively broad and provide a fast ramp process if that's what you so desire. And the idea here is that you make it so that you choose the course of the advancement so that the players are being guided into the direction that you want them to go, so that the pursuit is controlled and understandable to them, so that if they want to go back and look for additional information at a later time, they will already know the mechanics of how that is accomplished. Now, some people ask, what is the real purpose of utilizing exposition? Since there are other ways to show the information, whether it be direct observation or experiential thresholding, the idea is that there are certain amounts of information that are really optimally should be in the realm of common knowledge for the players, and utilizing other mechanisms such as a ramp check or perhaps even just a straight check allows them to fill in the gaps in their common knowledge by allowing you to elucidate them on the parts that they should already know in such a way that it feels like it's part of their story. It isn't just a rare data point that you're going to present. Instead, you're going to give them the reasons why they needed to understand it and develop the knowledge on their own, so that they can therefore provide the impetus for later research in the same vein if they so desire. Now, there are times, of course, that the kind of engagement you want to use is more controversial or perhaps competitive, and this generally is when you've got a argumentative debate or a discussion where the players are seeking arguments and adjustments that will suit their described agenda, so that the gathering of the data merits the success that they might have in the debate vein. And realize that any dice roll that ends up in a true conflict like this really is a combat. It's just done with a war of words and an understanding of the elements of the engagement, what they are talking about, what they are considered to be success. Are they raising their voices? Is there a change in tone? Are they utilizing cajoling or threatening terminology? What are they doing within it? This is all narratively defined by the player and the game master along the pathway, so that the intensity and the depth of the conversation can itself be resolved within the die roll mechanism, using the classic wild success or failure mechanism that we've talked about in other conversations about combat. And now also realize that the real point of this is that in a conversation, if the players are debating back and forth, the idea is that you want to ultimately have a level of continuity to your argument and your position in the conversation, and then imaginatively express it so that it can be seen as changing the other person's mind. And the die rolls, therefore, are just the mechanical portion of that actual debate. And it's a lot of fun when the players start to challenge their own ideas and challenge what they've believed in the past, because when they do so, now the story is opening up for them, and it's no longer the story that you were creating, but it's the story that they are now creating by their own efforts through the conversational process. But to me, the most effective portion of this is when the players get to those I get it moments, when they finally cross that threshold and not only just win, they're ready to win the argument or have already won the argument, but now they're actually internalizing the information and seeing how their curiosity spawned the creativity to grasp what was going on around them and what was elemental to the story that they were pursuing. When you give them that opportunity and you step back and let the players develop their understanding, the richness that creates really does not only tie them to the concept of exposition, but now they also start to crave what they might discover next. And so they now have a newer, more rich understanding and are looking for the new Easter eggs, the new tidbits that you might reveal to them during these specialty episodes. Now, there is a warning. You want to make sure that when you run one of these particular kinds of expository sessions that you give them the full measure. The players should come out of the situation of an expository session, whether it be an archive or a library, or whether they've actually searched high and low for material, physical materials that you determine to be what they need to understand what's going on. You need to make sure that you provide that to them in spades so that there is absolute satiation, because these really should only be used very sparingly. My players, if given the option, I know of at least one of my groups that would play every week in or around the libraries, because they like that mechanism where they're gaining the information by insight and by die rolling, so that there is that give and take of discovery merged with the understanding that they develop. And you need to really keep using that sparingly. You don't want to overload them with it, because number one, it, like any other type of encounter, it will become boring if you use it over and over again exclusively. So make sure that you splinter it up and utilize different types of encounters. Yesterday we talked about the various kinds and types of random type encounters, but now I'm talking about more specifically the dedicated ones where you are providing them with a particular I hate the term, but the concept of fan service. You're providing them with what they have an itch for in their minds that they want to pursue in the session, and therefore you want to make sure that when you give it to them, you provide everything that they're going to need, so that they will be fine with not having another one for a while, that they're going to have plenty to ruminate going over the same details week over week for another series of adventures before they come back to another archive or location where they can gather more information. And also realize that the very methods by which you provide the information themselves should be a nice hodgepodge and mix when it comes to how you play out the encounters that you have in mind. Oh, that's a really long one. What did I do? I have to fix this. Wow. I got on a roll, didn't I? Let me fix this real quick here. Okay, so there we go. The idea here is that as we come to the end of the episode, the idea here is that using these episodes extremely rarely, it precludes delays in departure. We have had situations where there wasn't enough provided so that the players wanted to spend week over week over week in the library, and you mechanically need to be able to curtail that to make the story move along. Also, the irony is that when you give them a concise amount of data in a short period of time, they won't take a long time to process it, but rather they'll find ways to make it make sense as quickly as possible so that they can progress on the adventure into the other pieces that you expect. So I know that an episode like this, where we talk about the particulars of the encounter, make it feel like it's contrived and elementally created by the storyteller, but that couldn't be farther from the truth, because the direction that the players take their research is up to them, and there is no mechanic that I've put in place that drives them to ask the kind of questions that I anticipate, other than providing them with the answers that seem to fill with what they're looking for. So I only mention all of this that we need to make sure that in all of our game sessions we are providing the utmost in excitement, thrill, and fun to your players, because that is what they are there for. We are playing the games for the experience. We're not playing the games for feeding someone's ego or making pontificating on different subjects. Instead, you're just making for a fun encounter that the players will want to engage with week over week over week. Alrighty, I want to thank you for the time you spent with me tonight. We will be ending this episode at this point. Make sure you follow us at NycosRPG on YouTube, and also for information about our Patreon game, check that out at patreon.com/Nykos. And I will see you again in the next episode, Monday morning at 10 a.m. Talk to you later. Oh, and by the way, you've done enough work. Now go play.